I hope all of you are filling up the poll so that we can get a better idea of the audience. Good evening, everyone. I am Divyanshi, and I'll be moderating today's Q&A session with Kimaya. I lead events at the Women of IIT Network, and I'm a third-year electrical engineering undergrad at IIT Bombay. For past 3 years, I've worked over quite a few technical projects and deployed a few, but it was last year since when I started speaking strongly about what I believe in and taking up leadership roles. And it has been an amazing journey so far. And I'm looking forward to learning more leadership principles in today's session. Now I would hand over to Kimaya to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session. I am Kimaya Jamgaokar, a volunteer at Women of IIT Network. I am a second-year undergraduate in the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Madras. My interests lie in programming, finance, sustainability, and I'm always keen to upskill myself by learning new things. Looking forward to a cognizant session on leadership principles. Thank you.
Amongst us, we have Madhura ma'am today, who is the founder of Aspire for Her. And now I would like to call upon her to introduce AFH to all of us and introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Divyanshi. It's my pleasure to welcome Gazal to the first ever event that she's doing at Aspire for Her as a mentor. Gazal, a few days back, I think just after you became a mentor, we realized that there was a need for a community called Women in IIT. And the power and the brains behind that community is actually sitting here, right here, Yashasvi. She has been with Aspire for Her, for a very long time, ever since the beginning of Aspire for Her. And, it has been a pleasure to see her grow into a leader. Because I strongly feel that a strong leader is someone who can actually galvanize 2,000 women of IIT in just a few days. And we all know that there are not that many women in IIT at all, and just get them together, motivated to follow a single dream, a single purpose, and a single cause, which Aspire for Her stands for. So congratulations, Yashasvi, for setting the ball in motion. These are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And Gazal, I cannot think of a better person to actually inspire them in their first ever session today to talk about how they can take ownership of their own future, how they can inspire financial independence in other women as well. Because that's what I have told them, that the responsibility is not just towards themselves, the responsibility is towards every woman in India. Because you are here, you are in a position of privilege, and there is so much more that all of you girls can achieve if we dream together and walk together. So thank you so much for doing this. Gazal, we know that you have an incredibly hectic schedule. Thank you for taking out the time. This is a very informal conversation with a bunch of very young women who definitely look up to you and want to follow your footsteps. So over to you, Kimaya, Divyanshi, Yashasvi. I don't want to stand between Gazal and all of you. All the very best.
Thank you so much for your kind words. Ma'am already introduced quite a lot about Yashasvi to us, and now I would actually like to call Yashasvi to introduce about the WIN network. She is the community head and the main idea behind WIN.
Thank you so much. I think Madhura ma'am, like always, you praise me too much. But I am so happy that Gazal ma'am has joined us today. I mean, the first time when Ruchita ma'am told us that, Gazal ma'am is going to be joining for the first session, I was absolutely thrilled. And when I shared the news with the entire team also, we got the same reaction. And just looking at her credentials, I mean, I was mind blown just by that, because from moving from going from an IIT and moving forward to starting her own company, going to colleges and universities like Harvard and Stanford, that is almost as if a dream, and many dreams come true all at once. So I am sure that the entire community, there are a lot of them who've joined us on Zoom, there are people watching on YouTube as well, and I'm hoping that everyone will learn from your guidance and from your words. So about the Women in IIT Network, we started this. I felt that there was a need of such a community after having been a part of the Aspire for Her community for almost 2 years. The vision statement, I think, for the WIN network is to create a more powerful and connected and skilled and confident force of women IT graduates so that they can go on to become leaders of multiple organizations and their own organizations and companies in the future. So you are just the perfect person to start with and to be on the first session. Thank you so much for taking out the time and joining us. I just hand over now. Thank you.
So I'll just add a few lines about Ghazal ma'am now. Almost everyone here is already adoring her and are in awe of her, but I'll just add a few lines to introduce her to the platform. So she is an entrepreneur and a co-founder of Rivigo, which is an Indian unicorn. She was recognized as the Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum in January 2021, Women of Metal by Motor India in February 2020, Forbes 40 Under 40 India in January 2020, and Most Powerful Women in Business in India by Business Today in January 2019. She is an IIT Delhi alumna with an MBA degree from Stanford GSB, besides Masters in Public Administration from Harvard. She is the definition of new age entrepreneurial and leadership role model. And we wholeheartedly welcome you to this session. And before we go ahead with the Q&A session with you, would you like to say something to us?
Thank you so much. You guys are like Christmas. I'm like feeling so much, love and a lot of appreciation. I think my story has just been, about taking some risks and building with purpose. Now, if that story is inspiring, then I think it's, it's a life well lived.
So I think we'll start with the Q&A session now. Kimaya will be taking
okay. So let's just begin the Q&A round. So the first question is, ma'am, you were working in big corporate firms. So why did you switch to becoming an entrepreneur and having your own company? What gave you the push to do so?
So I worked in McKinsey, right, which works a lot with a lot of big companies. So that itself was a crash course in seeing how corporates work. I think to choose a path, there has to be a push and a pull both, right? So the push, sort of creates that discomfort that you start feeling that, what do I need to, that this is not right for me. And the pull has to be something that, is something that's calling you. So for me, when the push was really, I didn't see the one of the things that I found missing in big corporates was just the pace of work and meritocracy as well, right? And as a person, I felt like I was very unfiltered in terms of being more focused on building and doing things and getting into the path of managing corporate ladders, right? So when I was doing a lot of work with corporates in India, I felt that there was just a lot of busy work that gets created, a lot of management that happens rather than actual work happening. So that sort of gave me clarity that maybe this is not for me, and I don't see myself putting through the corporate ladder for many years to find sort of light at the end of the tunnel. Could I do it? Yes. Would that have given me joy? No. And maybe very early on, I as a person started feeling that do what you love and love what you do, right? And sort of that became the anchor to figure out, yeah, nobody's sort of really happy in corporate careers, right? Everybody sort of either managing up or managing, Madhura is sort of maybe it's
I am resonating with what you're saying, and except that I discovered it, rather I thought of doing something different much later than you.
Yeah. So maybe that and the other was, there was and I can only connect the dots looking back, because there was this Pan IIT event that I was attending in 2006, I don't know if it still happens. And they had given a case study on knowledge and IP, etc. in India. And we got selected to go and amongst the top 3 teams amongst all IITs to go and attend at the IIT Pan IIT convention that year, which was happening in Bombay. And I remember, it was at that event where, President Kalam at that time was giving a live address. And he said that IITians should not be job seekers, they should be job creators. And that really stuck with me. And, I felt like being in India and, getting education, and on top of that, sort of privileged education is something very rare. And frankly, I felt lucky that I got it. I mean, just the zip code that you're born in this country can decide on what kind of life you end up living. So there is definitely a luck in it. And I felt that to whom much is given, much is expected. So that's what sort of made me think about that, it is that there is something more that we should be doing, right? And naukri to kabhi bhi kar lenge. IIT sort of gives you that, protects your risk ki aapko kabhi bhi, you'll not have to, be without a job, because, your resume, the moment you have IIT on it, you will get a job. But, with that sort of downside risk protected, why not sort of, build for the country or build something new? Because even if you fail or fall, you actually have a good safety net, right? So sustenance would never be an issue. So I think those two things sort of motivated, gave the push and the pull for that corporate was not for me. And entrepreneurship is what I would love doing, because it, you can follow your passion in it, you can follow a purpose, you can build with purpose, and you can, create something of social good, like for the country, if you're creating jobs or, actually solving a customer problem.
I think a lot of us might have got clarity over the dilemma we all might have been facing, and it was a very beautiful answer. Next, we would like to know about, being a woman leader. So basically, in your opinion, how different is it in terms of experience for a woman to be a leader? Do you think we face more challenges, or have you experienced it yourself, or how did you overcome it?
So IIT prepares you really well for sort of the lack of diversity you face in corporates and even startups. Somebody, I think a year ago, was asking me, did IIT prepare you for entrepreneurial journey? And I think the only thing it prepared me for was to walk into a room and be the only girl in that room, right? Or the only female in that room, and to own your to hold yourself and to own your space. I remember, I don't know how bad the sort of gender diversity is at other IITs, but IIT Delhi was still better. But I remember walking into mechanical 101 class, and I was like one female in a class of about 71 students. And just as I'm saying this, I see a Vipul Sharma sort of coming on video, so that, I didn't know it has, this seems to be the reverse ratio here. But I think it's more a mindset, right? So if you stop playing that narrative for yourself, that maybe I'm at a disadvantage because of this, frankly, that narrative can be very self-deprecating. Today it is your gender, tomorrow it could be something else. Ki main IIT se nahi hu. Frankly, more than gender, India mein the real caste is actually IIT. Think about entrepreneurs who are not from IIT, the level of underconfidence they feel when they go and pitch to venture capitalists, right? So I actually say that the real diversity issue in startups is having non-IIT entrepreneurs, right? Because they just feel at a sense lack of disadvantage. So I think, in life, if you have that narrative that I'm less, and I'm, this is too much, I'll face a lot of challenges. Then you can pick anything in life and you can create a narrative, whether that's your gender, whether where you come from, where you studied, your color, anything, right? Like I studied in the US as an international student, and I could think that because I didn't grow up with this kind of education system, maybe the cards are stacked against me. But the other way to think is that everyone has their share of challenges, right? So I will just deal with mine, and here is how I'm going to deal with it. And I think that is a more powerful and empowering narrative than living with the other one, because that has no end. You can just make a list of everything that you feel you're at a disadvantage of. Yes, like with everything, you would face these challenges, but own it up, laugh it off. ये है, ये नहीं होगा तो कुछ और होगा कल. So just wear your confidence fully, like, and that's what you should sort of be proud of, and change the, we are the first to judge ourselves as well. When you stand in front of the mirror, you're already judging yourself, and when you judge yourself, you're projecting that lack of self-confidence onto others. So maybe the others are not thinking about it, but you yourself are thinking that, oh, maybe they are judging me, and maybe they are, but that's why they are where they are, and you will move ahead. I mean, frankly, people who judge don't move ahead very much in their lives, because at the end of the day, what we do at workplaces is to work with people. So it's a very important part of interpersonal dynamics. So they may be judging you today because you're a woman and you're in business. They might be judging someone else for some other reason. So I would say, too bad for you. Matlab, nothing's wrong with me. It's just, I wish you could change. So I would actually change the narrative there, that yes, there are challenges for women in business, and for women in startups even more. It's much more lonelier. Are things better today than they were 20 years ago? Definitely. Will things be better for you than today? Absolutely. I mean, we can, it'll just, the good thing is it's on an improving trajectory, right? But if an absolute I were to say, is it easy? Maybe no.
Thank you so much for your answer, ma'am. We have one more question that says, did your experience or your studies at IIT Delhi help you in your entrepreneurial journey? If yes, then how?
So one part of it I already answered, which is how being at IIT prepares you for, facing, the diversity equation in workplaces. The other is, the other part is that it actually, the fact that you spend time with a lot of smart people, it actually, the second thing where it helps is you actually know what brilliance is, right? So when you're building teams, you look for that smartness. So it is both a good and a bad thing, by the way, because there is like a certain IQ that you operate with. And when you sort of look for teams, you actually want people like you and similar to you. So the good thing is you can attract that kind of talent and have a lot of horsepower in your teams and what you do. But the downside of that is that not everything in the world needs an IITian to work. So hota kya hai na ki fir you end up putting a motor in a bicycle job. So that creates a problem, which is that, as you build organizations, you actually also need to think about right talent to value. So not every job in the world needs like very smart people, right? Sometimes it just needs somebody to do a job repetitively or like experts. So that's why I caution it and say that it actually works as a double-edged sword. The third thing that IIT teaches is the ability to go deep into a topic, right? So I always felt that, and that appetite for learning, which actually, if you think of it, Indian education system never encourages it. Frankly, let me take that back. IIT, maybe, I don't think that real inquisitiveness to learn more tha. We were just getting through courses. that I actually picked up more in at Harvard and Stanford, where there was, the education system is much, worlds apart. The way kids learn there, where they are actually encouraged to ask questions, where it's less about just learning, just memorizing, and more about asking questions. And I wish that that part was encouraged more in IITs back then.
So next, we would like to know, like you are an entrepreneur yourself. So we wanted to know if there are any women entrepreneurs which you admire and why.
Actually, I don't idolize people, because I think, but I get inspired by most everyone around me. So I try to find inspiration. If you ask me, like, is there like somebody who I just hold as a role model and idolize? No, but I get inspired by the stories, the choices they made, the challenges they faced, and how did they overcome it, right? So whether that was Sheryl Sandberg sort of, and I've met her because Access in Silicon Valley, like the way she sort of picked herself through tough life challenges, or whether that is Falguni at Nykaa, right? The sort of courage she had to start a business, and even when the odds were stacked against her from an experience point of view in a space where there were already people existing. So I take inspiration from people at that point of time and how they dealt with it. And it doesn't have to be people who are like it's all around. For example, I get inspired by a lot of people in my teams and the work ethic they have, right? It is insane. Sometimes in my team, there was a woman in my team who was managing work and her kids' studies and her sort of ailing in-laws with like absolute grace. And when I got to know it, I was like, I could not have guessed that there is so much going in your life and you still walk in every day with a smile. So that was a moment of inspiration for me. So I would say no role models as such, but a lot of inspiring stories from all around.
Thank you for your answer, ma'am. As most of our audience is women or a girl students from IIT, what would you suggest to them to make better future leaders?
The first thing I would say is stop calling yourself as a woman from IIT. Although it says as a network, it's fine. It's a community, but you're an IITian first. You're not a woman IITian. I'm a founder. I'm not a female founder. So till that, you have to change the narrative, right? You're an IITian, simple, right? And therefore, the world is your oyster. IITians have done well as leaders across the world, right? So nothing is out of bound until the time you don't change. Almost get a t-shirt printed in which you put like woman and strike it out and say just IITian, right? You have to do that. But what my advice to leaders would be, see, and I will maybe paint back the picture of what I see, having worked with a lot of young, folks from IIT and across over the last 7-8 years in the startup ecosystem. In my mind, the archetype of a future leader I see along 3 dimensions, right? The first is the ability to understand tech. And I don't necessarily mean coding, but just understanding the power of technology, because the businesses of the future will be tech led. Maybe they'll be tech first or tech led, or tech ops, but there will be a huge element of technology. So irrespective of whatever stream you are in, just invest in building that knowledge, because if you don't understand the vocabulary, you may not be able to communicate in it, right? So, and that's a long journey. The technology that's being spoken about today will be very different 10 years ago. And as you guys are graduating, it's just a learning habit to inculcate, right? You might know a coding language today, but who knows how we'd be coding 10 years later, right? So have a mechanism for yourself on how will you upgrade or update your own, skill set there, right? And I think that can actually be a very strong you know weapon for you to even feel more confident, right, in meetings. Because unfortunately, one of the things that gets stereotyped for women is that you're good at doing like touchy feely kind of things, right, which is like HR kar lo, finance kar lo, like those kind of things. Yes, traditionally women have done better than men in those roles, but that doesn't mean that that's all they can do. So, and I'm yet to see actually women in tech. When you used to hire the tech team at Rivigo, I would always look for like women candidates for engineering manager and CTO roles. We couldn't find candidates, and I was surprised because in my batch there were at least 10 women in CS and IIT Delhi, and I was like, where did they all go, right? Because I didn't, and maybe they made choices along the way that that were prioritized family or maybe other countries, but I didn't find women in engineering leadership roles in India. And but wherever I've met, I found them like super super powerful, super sort of detailed about their subject. So I would recommend that if you're studying like core sciences and sort of technology, just own it, right? And you would be very rare in that cohort of people, but if you make it, like, you will outshine a lot of people by by miles. So I would, it might be harder initially, but make it work. I'll give an example where I had interviewed somebody for our operations role, and for the first time I met like a factory manager from HUL. She used to run a factory of manage, sort of be the factory manager there. So they have different factories, and she was telling me that she was the first sort of female factory manager in HUL. And I thought like her stories were just inspiring, like the way she had sort of handled labor union issues, production issues, etc. Now why just one when there are like so many women studying chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, right? Why find just one in the entire cohort? But if you do, you stand out. And so I would say might be tougher, but make it happen. The other skill set for leaders of future, and I'm again saying this is leaders, right? I'm not sort of saying women leaders, right? Is understanding of product. And product is basically understanding of the user. So how do you build empathy and frameworks for understanding user behaviors, for understanding user journeys, for building user needs in your mind, right? Because any business at the end of the day is catering to some need of the consumer. So how do you find solutions to problems rather than bring solutions which will find a problem? So often I've seen engineers will develop something and then be like, ab iski market dhoondte hain. I would say work market back, right? That there is a need, and how do you become smart at in product thinking? And product thinking is different from tech. It is understanding, and product, I mean both like physical product or like tech products, which are your apps, websites and stuff, both of these, right? Equally. It's an important leadership skill, because that's the business that you do, right? So if you're not able to understand consumer, then you're actually a researcher. Then you're just building technologies which will find a need somewhere. So if you're in a business, or if you're thinking of starting a business, you need to build that customer back problem solving. The third leadership skill is actually people skills, the ability to sort of motivate and unlock the best out of people you work with. And these could be your peers, these could be people in your team, or these could be really anybody. I mean, think about how you influence people, and why would people come and work with you, for you, right? So what kind of impact do you leave on people, and how you want to become better at that. Because at the end of the day, one of the things you learn in businesses is that people join a company but leave because of a bad manager. So you don't want to be somebody joined because of the purpose and mission but left because I was stuck with a bad manager, right? And so that is something maybe IIT doesn't teach, but there's enough and more. I mean, there's a lot of sort of good books on it, right? Which I would recommend about different models. And I think the thing with being a people leader is you can't copy someone, right? You can't be like, oh, I'll be like, Sheryl Sandberg, or I'll be like somebody else. But it's about finding your own true north, and being authentic to yourself as a leader, right? That this is who I am and this is what I need to be to be more effective as a people leader. Because even if you otherwise you end up becoming an individual contributor, right? At the end of the day, we all work in businesses or workplaces are essentially people led, right? Driven. So the ability to rally, get a team together, motivate them, get the best out of them, unlock them, and that's a CEO skill, that's a leadership skill.
I think that was a very detailed answer for all of us to actually follow to get some very good insights. At some point in your answer, you mentioned updating and upskilling up to the recent tech. So like technology grows every day, and we've also seen that you are also quite active around crypto. So how do you keep yourself updated and upskilled with new technologies that keep on coming?
Yeah, just have a habit of how you build knowledge and understanding. Right now you have to find your own sources, whether that is have these as habits, right? Whether you read books to go deep into a topic, whether you reach out and talk to people, whether you read the newspaper, whether you do like a course online, but have like your own personal learning journey. I mean, universities give very static knowledge at a point in time, right? Learning is lifelong. And with the access to information and sources that we have, I think we should always be learning. And so figure out your mechanisms. The way I do is I if I want to get to know about a topic, two things: either I pick up the most recommended books and just go deep in that area, or two, just so either a book or like some learning course, which is like an expert sort of thing. The second is talk to people, right? So and it's okay to say I don't know what I don't know, right? So when you start with that, I think people are more open to sort of sharing. The problem becomes when everybody thinks that aapko to sab pata hi hoga, and when I reach out to people, I say that would you have time mostly for me to learn. I write it that mostly for me to learn. I think people become very open to sharing. So all, and yeah, live with that attitude that always be learning.
Yeah, I think that's one big aspect we all need to learn, to just learn to ask to teach us.
Yes. And the other is to know that if you've learned whatever you've learned, try explaining it to like a 3-year-old. When you do that, you'll realize, have you been able to sort of really, build that into now, knowledge for yourself. If you've read a lot and met a lot of people on crypto and NFTs, but if you can't translate that to someone who doesn't know it, so that's that's also a skill, right? That to be able to transfer what you've learned in a very simplified way. So one of the questions I used to ask in interviewing, actually there were two questions that I used to ask in interviewing. One used to be, how have you improved yourself in the last 6 months? And I would always ask that, because see, self-improvement is a mindset. And for some people I didn't get answers like one other way to think of it, if you were to just improve 1% every day, at the end of the year you would actually have improved some 40 times, right? That's the power of compounding. So just small changes, small bits of information that you can consume every day, at the end of the year you can actually be an expert in that topic. Often we think of big goals, but small habits can be more powerful in learning than this. So that's why I used to ask how have people improve. For example, people put New Year resolutions that I want to read 50 books today. I would challenge you to check that 50 books in the year. Most people don't get through, but I would change that to say that the real thing to track is I want to read 30 minutes every day. And that's an easier thing to track than saying I want to read 50. And by January, you've read 0. So you're already behind the run rate. But 30 minutes every day feels doable. So you pick up anything and you start reading. And, that's why learning should be more inputs rather than output focused. Or improvement should be more input than output focused. Outputs will come, but outputs also make it very unachievable. Inputs or small habits actually make it very achievable. The second thing I would ask from people is, how would you explain what you do to your grandmother? And I used to ask that to especially product managers, because कि आप बना रहे, मतलब basically अपनी दादी को कैसे बताओगे कि आप क्या बना रहे हो, right? Like Swiggy, how would you explain it to your grandmother? So that helps me gauge that how can the person think very simply and with clarity, rather than just a lot of information but not a lot of noise but no signals in it.
That was quite a wonderful answer. So the next question is, you pursued 2 master's degree, which is quite rare. What made you study both management and public administration from the top colleges of the world?
See, I've taken life as it happened. So between heading the usual career path has been, IIT consulting and then head out for an MBA. And between that, I decided to, take a break and just try something different. And that ended up being a public policy stint, right? So one of the advice I got was that, the lower your stakes, the more risk you can take. So, if you know that your career path eventually kuch bhi kar lo aap consulting ke baad MBA mein to ho hi jayega. So, I could have practically taken a year off and traveled. So I said, why not try something that's out of my comfort zone? I did public policy as a parliamentary associate with a sitting member of parliament. Back then an opportunity just came through. I went for the discussion interview with the MP, thought this could be interesting, decided to jump into it, and just absorbed it all in. It was a different world. I don't think in 1.5 years I met any IIT person. These are all, policy wonks from, the Lutyens, Delhi. And what drew me into it was the size and scale of impact that you can create through better public policy. And, if impact is something that drives you, the scale of what you do, it interested me how, policy design and implementation can be done much better. Like how can governments be more efficient the way businesses are, right? And are there learnings to be taken? And while I was doing that, I got interested into studying public policy in detail. And that's where I applied to study.
All in all, it's a lot of risks and challenges which you actually, voluntarily took up.
Right now, the risks played out, it makes a great story. But if the risks didn't play out, it would have still made a great story of failures. So, irrespective of, success or failure, the story is always good.
What always motivates and pushes you to, take the higher plunge?
I mentioned first answer that I don't know. I mean, some of these things have just stuck with me, which is, what's the purpose here? And, is there something that one can do that leaves the world a better place than what we found it, right? For me, purpose is something that sparks the light in you. So you in your own way can illuminate the world. It's a quote that I read from Oprah Winfrey, and I think it encapsulates the best, right? Everybody has something that they bring to the table, but if you match that skill with purpose, then you actually unlock magic, right? If what you do and your purpose aligns, I've seen the best unlock in people. Otherwise, job har koi kar sakta hai. I mean, if Madhura had to do a job, she wouldn't be doing this, right? So at the end of the day, purpose is important. It anchors you in life, gives a meaning
So
to it.
there's a question which asks, how and when did you think of starting Grivigo? How did you come up with the idea and what motivated you to start it?
So I got back from graduating from Stanford and Harvard 2014 June, and I was head house hunting in Gurgaon with the clarity that I wanted to start up. So I think the only interview I've given in life is out of IIT. Uske baad, I was basically like, life will, we'll figure out our life. Of course, yeah, there was Stanford interview and like those sort of college admissions, but came back with the intent of starting up. I that time, just within a week was doing all this house hunting, dealing with a bit of reverse culture shock of being back in India. And that time I ran into Deepak, who is my co-founder and also the CEO at Rivigo. And he had actually been working on the idea. So he was still at McKinsey and had been thinking about this problem. And I met him for coffee and I heard about the idea. And at that time, he started by saying this is like building Uber for trucking. And then he spoke about the idea in detail, and how relay trucking and how you can change the lives of truck drivers. I actually at the end of the meeting said that you're short selling the idea by saying it's Uber for trucking, because this is actually fundamentally changing a profession, right? You're making it more humane, you're making it more respectable, you're making it a viable income generating option. So it's much, the impact is far and reaching, beyond a simple business. And that motivated that. I mean, I connected with the problem, I connected with the scale. So that time I realized three things that were important for me and which continue to be important as I look at what I want to build is, the scale at which you can impact something. The second is, is there a purpose in it, right? So, I mean, you know yourself, right? So for me it was purposeful because logistics is a large sector in India. It's the backbone of the economy. It's second largest employment generator that had a lot of problems. So purpose, I felt that from that point of view was there. And third is the role of technology, right? So here it was a very core and strong backend of tech, solving some never done solved before problems. So it excited on all those metrics. And then I went on road trips, met maybe 500 600 truck drivers, understood the real pain points, and then figured that this is something that's worth solving.
We saw you mentioning Stanford and Harvard places, like you learned a lot from the scope. So what all do you think you learned exceptionally from that space rather than this? What difference, what did you learn from people coming from different backgrounds? What kind of culture, or how does that kind of experience of studying in Stanford and Harvard brought changes in you?
Yeah, so what it helped was that one is how to be very efficient with your time, because there is so much to do and learn, and you're there for like these 2 years, 3 years, right? I did the 2 degrees combined, it was 3 years, and it's almost like drinking water from a fire hose. So you have to be very focused, and efficient. So just from a personal discipline point of view, जो IITs में नहीं आता, IITs में, मतलब for an 8 a.m. class, people show up at like 7:59, 8:10. There's just a lack of discipline in IITs, right? चल रहा है, जुगाड़ से कर रहे हैं, right? Night out मार लेंगे, कर लेंगे. And the one thing that stood out with an international peer set was just how disciplined people were, and especially Americans have a very high work ethic. So one thing just I learned was just how to, because they are more see, we have a lot of resources available to us, right, here, but there you don't. So I had classmates who were like waking up, preparing their breakfast, reading a case, driving or like getting to college and being there like at 10 minutes before the class started. And there was true respect for time and your work ethic कि मैंने इतने बजे बोला है तो इतने बजे होएगा. Now that when I carried it, that's why the reverse culture shock, because here that reliability doesn't exist at workplaces. 7 ka 9 ban jayega, etc. So that's something I try to build as a culture, right? Reliability, as that following up is a sin, right? Like if I have to follow up with somebody to get some data or material. The other thing that helped was that peer learning, that how do you learn from people around you, right? And whether that is networks, one is to have like X number of people in your network on LinkedIn, but how do you sort of learn from that network and that peer group? Frankly, 50% or more of the learning at some of these in universities is actually your peer group. So how do you even after college continue to have a peer group that you continue to learn from, right? And that power of that community. For example, like some of those groups and communities, even 7 years later, we're still in touch with, right? And that's very powerful, right? Because it opens your worldview. And how do you create a diverse set of network to learn from? Because if all IITians just hang out like with each other, so वो same type की learning हो रही है. So how do you create very diverse learning groups? In my, and people come from like varied backgrounds. I mean, in my class I had somebody who was a film director. She had worked on like Pixar movies and stuff, right? And she was there. There was there were people who had been in like US military and Afghan wars. There were a lot of people, of course, from private equity consulting and etc. And so many worldviews. And these universities and these campuses have created mechanisms for people to share. So they were like different formats, small group dinners, sharing talks, etc. And I think that was so empowering, that in the organizations that you create, how do you create these mechanisms for people to learn from each other? Because like bond and appreciation aata, I've seen that you start valuing this ecosystem much more, of your peer group. The third thing I would say that I learned from these universities is actually just the ability to unlearn, relearn a lot, because you should, again, the thing that you should always be learning, and a lot of the colleges there are very aware that they are teaching very static things in at a point of time, and a lot of things they're teaching will change after, and that was continuously ingrained in us. So yeah.
Thank you so much for your answer, ma'am. This part of unlearn and relearn is indeed very true. So the next question I have is, like you said, if you want to build ownership at the workplace, have more women. So what thoughts made you say that? And what qualities of women do you think help in this?
So, ownership, what is ownership, right? Ownership is basically, and I used to explain it to in some of our culture talks, right? Like, let's say यहाँ पे, phone पड़ा है और ये phone गिर जाए नीचे, if it falls down. Typically in organizations, you'll find किसी को दिखेगा ही नहीं पहली बात तो. Organizations operate, कहीं पे कुछ खराब है, कुछ है, दिखेगा ही नहीं, because वो मेरा काम ही नहीं है ना, मेरा काम तो ये है. तो गिरा पड़ा है, किसी को दिख नहीं रहा है. Then somebody will say, hey, there's something fallen. I think he dropped it. तो उधर अभी भी फोन गिरा हुआ है नीचे, किसी ने उठाया नहीं. Somebody else will say, but I didn't drop it, why should I pick it? Somebody will say, it's not my job. So, either somebody is blaming somebody, or they're saying it's not my job, or they're saying, somebody else dropped it. I didn't drop it, right? And that's how a lot of big organizations, where people get siloed in, roles and my job, my work, wahan pe ye hota. Whereas ownership to me is, you just pick it up first, and then you decide kisne giraya kya hai. And I've found over time that women actually, and maybe it is genetic or the way we are brought up, are just more responsible for the things around them, right? So they come from a place of just high work ethic and responsibility. And maybe it was, when the way you're brought up in India, you're taught to care for everybody else. You're taught to care about your home, your people around you. And so it's never so much about you, but others, which I think is a double-edged sword. So that's why on that LinkedIn post, I'd said that, there are downsides to it. But the one thing I felt is that they just, if there was a team member, a woman team member, and if you've given some work, I would never have to follow up, right? And especially team managers, if they were team में कुछ किसी ने काम नहीं करा, the work gets done, right? And the downside of it is that maybe they will end up doing the work all by themselves. वो हर बार पेन गिरेगा और फोन गिरेगा और वही उठा रही होंगी. So they almost also get misused by the teams, that या ये है ना, ये कर देगी इसको, मतलब, which should not happen, right? Like, you should not be taken for granted, in your workplace. So I think if you can balance that along with your ownership, I think that's a sort of lethal mix for leadership.
That was a very insightful answer for all of us. It was very wonderful for us to talk with you, and the way you answered in pointers at quite a few places, actually, for someone taking, we have pointers to take back while we go back, what you need to learn as a leader, or, what all have you learned in your experience, and all of it. It was really wonderful for me to talk with you. And now I would like to call Yashasvi for a vote of thanks.
Before that, I'd let Madhura ma'am say if there are any final words she wants to add.
No, I think I really enjoyed myself. So Gazal, I make it a point to keep quiet and keep myself out of the way when these conversations are happening, because I would like the community to really ask a question. The community is, all about their spirit, and that we have several communities that we work with. We're going to be formally launching the Women in IIT community on 8th of March. We decided that was our second birthday, so it's a good day to celebrate and launch the community formally. So we're very excited with that. So Gazal, we'd love your inputs and insights on getting more women from the alumnus, of IIT alumnus to come forward and also sort of be part of this community, because these conversations they have to be ongoing. And in the way in which we're trying to impact minds here, I think if she can see it, she can be it. That's what we all believe. And we feel that these conversations will really pave the way for, all our young women to actually get there. And remember, it's not only about the women in IIT, it's about all women in India, and all of us have a responsibility towards them. I see one question here, which you guys haven't answered, which is from Vipul Sharma. And I'm very happy that Vipul, you're asking this question about entrepreneurship, on social entrepreneurship changing the life of underprivileged, uneducated, middle-aged women in smaller cities and undeveloped states, and can commercial entrepreneurships unite them, etc. Vipul, we do have a community called Entrepreneury, and that is meant for all women entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And you will find a lot of resources for women from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, towns, villages, etc. We, in fact, plan to do something for rural entrepreneurs very soon. It was very interesting to see that just within a few months of starting this community, we thought that not enough women want to be entrepreneurs in India, but we've got 10,000 entrepreneurs who have signed up for this community. So that gives me a lot of joy and a lot of optimism for what India can do. Yesterday, we saw one of them. In fact, the first contestant of Shark Tank was here on our platform yesterday. We, of course, have Falguni also coming in on Feb 22nd. So we have a whole series of interesting role models for entrepreneurs. You saw Gazal today. But we will continue doing this. We will continue making resources for entrepreneurs so that they can scale up their businesses. And there is a way to unite them. There is a way to give them loads of opportunities to translate their dreams into reality. So yes, Vipul, we do not want to restrain ourselves only to the metros and the tier 1 cities. We definitely want to go out and impact many more entrepreneurs. The reason why we picked up the name Entrepreneury is so that every Nari in India, irrespective of whether they understand English or not, whether they're part of an urban ecosystem or not, they will be able to be part of this ecosystem. So that's a little answer for you, Vipul. But thank you so much, Gazal. I learned so much. I love the 3 points around scale, purpose, and technology. And I did notice that most of the messages that you gave had 3 points, and I love that.
So your first job does leave a lasting impact. So that comes from consulting.
I thought so indeed. And I must say another thing, and we leave you with all our best wishes for, I know that you're planning something, as a next chapter. We will eagerly look forward to this space to learn more from you when you're ready to share. We want to cheer you. We want to ensure that the entire Aspire for Her community, the entire WIN network will be behind you to support you in whatever that you do, whatever that you choose to pursue. So thank you very much. And back to you guys to close the show. Yashasvi, over to you.
If I could just add, I wanted to add towards the end, very inspiring to, see what all of you, young girls are doing. I feel so jealous that, we didn't have any of this when we were starting out. But like I said, it just needs a few people who believe in the purpose, to come together and create magic, right? So what you're doing will have so much lasting impact on generations to come, right? And maybe today you think of you're just starting, but I can tell you 10 years later, people, you would meet women for whom this network really sort of changed the life for them. So my best wishes, and if there's any help you need, feel free to reach out, whatever I can help, and just more power to you and your tribe.
That is so amazing to hear. And really cheers for you, and thank you so much. Yes, I think we can all put up the hearts over here. Some of the stories that we hear even today at Aspire for Her really motivate me every day. So thank you so much, Gazal, for your kind words. And we will take you up on that. We will certainly take you up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining, ma'am. Thank you so much for taking out the time.
And that concludes today's session. Thank you everyone for joining in. We really hope you liked this session. Do fill out the feedback form that is posted in the chat box. Don't forget to register yourself for the Aspire for Her group and the WIN community, a community especially made for the women IITs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhura ma'am, for joining and for filling the room with energy like you always do. Thank you for taking out the time, and thank you to everyone who joined the session. Hope you all will be accessing all of the resources that WIN and AFH has to offer, be it, college students, IT students, even males and our, older working professionals and returnees. So thank you so much for joining. This is just a last feedback poll that you wanted to add, just to see, where the audience is going and where they want to go. I'll just keep this on for 5 more seconds and then we can end the session.
See you. All the very best. Look forward to loads of more insightful sessions like this. This is just the beginning. We're just about getting started.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, one and all. It was a wonderful program. Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, I think we can end. Thank you, Divyanshi and Kimaya, for moderating the session amazingly.
It was a pleasure for us.
Okay, bye.